knows when he put it in the boat.
All right.
And the animals were sent, and he sent two of the unclean, 2 pairs of the unclean. He sent a pair of the clean.
Right. All right, Malin, you have it there. Read Genesis 7, 2 and 3 for us.
I do have it.
Well, get it back.
2 and 3. Of every clean animal, you are to take 7 couples, and of the animals that are not clean, 1 couple. Also of the birds in the air, take 7 couples, in order to preserve their species throughout the earth.
Charlie, I suspect that Noah did know the difference between clean and unclean, because apparently the animal sacrifice began as early as killing the animals to make clothing for the Adam and Hava, but it certainly continued with their children, and I see nothing indicate that animal sacrifice had been interrupted between the fall from the garden, or removal from the garden, and the time of Noah. And when he came out of the ark, he knew the process for sacrifice. So my suspicion, it's just my suspicion, there's no scripture says this, is that Noah, as did his ancestors, knew the difference between clean and unclean animals, because unclean animals are not acceptable for sacrifice.
Well, and if nothing more, he was instructed at that moment, because there were 7 couples of clean animals and only 1 of unclean. So you'd say, and he was told that, given those words. So he said, oh, these must be unclean because there's only 1 couple.
Well, they couldn't have been fruitful and multiplied either if one was, one of the pair was missing.
Right.
And then the key word over there in chapter 9 is food. I mean, it's a shaky place to stand, but you could stand on Ohel.
I don't think it's
food.
Shaky. All right, I'm restating my understanding that the instructions in Genesis 9, as rendered in our English translations, cannot be read literally. I believe that those instructions are intended to convey to Noah that he and his descendants are now allowed to eat meat. The third reason I believe Noah was not given permission to eat any animal is supply and demand. And Larry's already mentioned this. If Noah had slaughtered any unclean animal, what would have happened to that species?
Wouldn't have been.
Takes 2 to tango. My fourth reason for disagreeing with Bradford here is the Hebrew word remes. In modern Hebrew, it means insect. Most English Bible translations render it every living creature. But several of the Hebrew scholars I consulted say that in biblical Hebrew, the word remes means every clean living creature.
I'm just wondering what it might say in Hebrew.
Every clean living creature. That definition makes the passage from Genesis 9 intelligible for us, if he's given permission to eat every clean living creature. All right, those are my arguments against Bradford's position here that they were allowed to eat every animal. And so any other comments? There's been great discussion so far, but I don't want to rush through this. If you have something else to say, this is a good time.
Yeah, that was the only way for it to be possible for them to be fruitful and multiply.
Yeah, and that's certainly
Well, what that remes word, is that verse?
remes, R-E-M-E-S.
But is that verse 2? Not.
I believe it is. I don't have it in front of me right now, but I think that's where it comes from.
Oh, verse 3.
And Larry just mentioned my next point. Chapter 9, verse 1 repeats the original charge given to the humans, Adam and Hava, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Folks, of all the commandments given by Elohim, this one, for some reason, is the one we have most consistently obeyed. For some reason. Any more discussion about the chapter 9 of Genesis stuff? Well, one of the most significant aspects of the Genesis flood is that Noah knew either then or previous to then, from that point on at least, he knew the difference between clean and unclean animals. That difference is first specified for us in Leviticus 11. Among land animals, the clean ones are all mammals. They all have cloven hooves, and they all must be ruminants, the clean animals. Do I need to explain what a ruminant is?
Yeah.
Okay. It's not been too many years ago that almost everyone in this country would understand that, because we were a little closer to our food. I'm talking 30, 40, 50 years maybe. A ruminant is an animal that eats grass and converts that grass into something that we as humans, and certainly other animals, can then use as food. Ruminants convert grass into meat that we can eat. They convert grass into milk that we could drink and turn into a wonderful variety of fine things, good foods. But the point of ruminants is they can eat grass and turn it into a form that we can use, and we cannot eat grass and live in it. There's some grasses that we can eat some of, but just in terms of us living on a diet of fescue and clover, it ain't happening.
You can eat their seeds, but not the grass.
Exactly.
Right.
We can eat the seeds, but the grass itself, our digestive tracts do not process. So ruminants, and cows and sheep and goats primarily I'm talking about. I love to watch a milk cow at work. She goes out after milking in the morning and she chews, she eats all the grass that she could find that she wants, gets her belly full, and in this case I'm talking about a chamber of her stomach called the rumen. She fills that up, and then later in the day, often when the sun is up, she'll find a shady spot typically, lie down on all fours and constantly belch up wads of that grass she has been eating and chew it again and further process it with her teeth and with the digestive juices in her mouth, and then swallow it again, but this time it does not go to the first chamber of her stomach. It goes to the second, the reticulum. The ruminant animals, cattle and sheep and goats included, have 4 chambered stomachs: the rumen, reticulum, the omasum, and abomasum. And that process that the Father set up for them to turn that grass into something we can eat involves all those chambers of digestion, and they can eat that cellulose intense grass food and then turn it into meat and milk that we can then use. It's a miracle in so many ways.
Isn't evolution amazing?
Yeah, evolution is so smart. Evolution is so smart. But it's for the last couple of years, I've been kind of under the spell of a fresh understanding of the term, all flesh is grass. I always thought that meant, well, we're all temporary. And it does mean that we're all temporary. But in the most literal sense, every creature that exists on the earth, at least every land creature that I'm aware of, owes its existence to being able to either process grass directly or eating some product of an animal that is able to process grass. ruminants provide the miracle of turning indigestible plant matter into a way to keep us alive than other animals. That's probably more of an explanation than you were looking for, but I just
That
love
was
the
interesting.
process.
I didn't even know.
What's that?
It was interesting because I didn't know that. I didn't know.
And
I knew about the four stomachs, but I didn't know how it worked.
Good thing I asked.
Yes.
Rumination, when we use that term for thinking sometimes, it's come to be equated. I'm ruminating on that. It's not so much anymore because
Chewing the cud.
it means laying around chewing the cud. I'm reprocessing information that I have already taken in. That's rumination is a metaphor for that, because that glorious little brown Jersey who's lying there burping up wads of the grass she ate that morning and chewing it again is reprocessing for our benefit
Oh,
or
I-
for someone's
I
benefit.
think it's
Okay.
interesting, I hadn't thought of it before, but even the carnivores of the world eat ruminants.
All flesh is grass.
Yeah, exactly.
Even the meat eaters
Mhm.
exist
Grass eaters.
because grass grew. Old wisdom that shows up in farm journals occasionally. I'll summarize it this way. We owe our existence to a few inches of topsoil and the fact that it rains. Because that, now, no matter how sophisticated we think we are, now in Star Trek, and I was a Star Trek fan from the time it first came on, I'm old enough to remember that.
That's
I'm less so now, but I was enamored with it. In Star Trek, if you get hungry, you walk over to a machine and say, tea, Earl Grey, hot. You know, and this machine somehow miraculously generates that tea, or a steak and potatoes, or whatever you ask for. Folks, that ain't happening. That is science fantasy in its purest form. We owe our existence to the grass, and the grass owes its existence to a little topsoil and rain at the right time.
From the Father.
From the Father. We've come to a point in our culture where we think we are removed from the drudgeries of necessity. And I've seen so many politicians and economists and social planners talk about the advantages that so many people are freed from the drudgery of food production. I promise you that a time is coming when they will wish that they could get some of that drudgery and be back involved with food production, because they'll be hungry.
And they have no concept of what they're losing in their relationship to the Father by not being in that link. I mean,
Right.
a good friend of mine's father was Heterite, and her mother had left the family when she was little. And she said, you know, she remembers her dad putting her legs under the harness of the workhorses because he had to watch her, she's a toddler, and plowing the field with the horse singing hymns.
Mhm.
I mean, he was in a relationship to Father that somebody in a high rise telling the machine to give him Earl Grey, you know, doesn't happen.
In my opinion, one of Satan's most effective strategies has been to industrialize food production. And you can take from that
It's
whatever
been
you
one of our biggest health downfalls too. Adding all the chemicals.
Well, is he interested in our health?
Yes.
Gotta make it keep all the way from the cow to your table.
I live in a state where I can legally buy a broad variety of poisons, severe poisons. I can buy explosives. I can buy firearms and ammunition. But I cannot legally buy raw milk to drink. Now explain to me how and why that is.
Politics.
Because the guys that want to sell you milk want you to buy their milk.
Stupidity.
I assure you, my question was rhetorical.
Their milk, their drugs.
But that rumination thing, thank you for explanation for that, and that just reminds me of also as we spiritually, when we're reading, chewing the cud on the word of God, and it processes to our life.
You're right.
I'm looking up something here quickly I want to share
And we
with
have to
you.
keep coming back to it.
That's-
Mm-hmm.
As we grow, our understanding grows.
Yes.
Get to the fourth stomach.
Yeah.
All right, a few years ago, I was milking my cow one morning, and new words to an old melody started popping up in my mind. And the melody is, joyful, joyful, we adore thee. And there are 4 verses. I call this Joyful Jersey. Joyful Jersey, we adore you, rich and creamy, smooth and good. You come from a brown cow daily, tasting just like real milk should. Nothing added, nothing altered, just perfection that we sought. And our Annie never falters as she gives what can't be bought. Milk, cream, butter, yogurt, kefir, cheese, and ghee, and buttermilk. Each one sinfully delicious, texture smooth as finest silk. Food this good would cost a fortune if you even found a source. When you milk a doe-eyed Jersey, such fare is par for the course. This is the 3rd verse I wanted you to hear. Our lawmakers say it's poison, guaranteed to make one sick. They speak for the Agra lobby, and their claims are just a trick. One might wonder why they do it. Truth is plain if they would try. We take comfort knowing we have the best politicians money can buy.
Amen.
Well, sorry, that was not in the notes, but we got over that direction. Okay, the land animals, clean ones are all mammals with cloven hooves, and they must be ruminants. And the cloven hoof, do I need to explain that to anybody? Cows, sheep, goats have cloven hooves. Of course, so do pigs, but they're not clean. That's split all the way through there. That hard, it's kind of like fingernail material in a way. Hard hoof is completely divided in clean animals. But they have to have a divided hoof and chew the cud. Among water-dwelling creatures, clean ones have fins and they have scales. Clean birds are not quite so easily categorized. Unclean ones are primarily carnivores and or carrion eaters. But clean birds are not necessarily vegetarians. All of them eat insects, and folks, a chicken will eat about anything if it's available to it. So it's not quite clear-cut regarding diet to figure out what birds are clean and unclean. Both Levitcus and 11 and Deuteronomy, I think it's 14, I somehow didn't write that down, provide long list of unclean birds, but perhaps the most significant information I found on this distinction is on the website Bible Answers. If you just want to go to BibleAnswers.com, I think that you pull that up. But those folks provide this list. A clean bird has a craw or crop, and that's kind of the first compartment in their digestive tract where food ends up first. A clean bird has a gizzard with a double lining, which can be easily separated. And easy is a relative term here. Sometimes gizzards are not so easy to dissect. A clean bird is not a bird of prey. A clean bird does not devour food while flying. A clean bird's hind toe and middle front toe are both elongated. When a clean bird stands on a perch, it spreads its toes so that 3 in front are on one side of the perch and the one hind toe is on the opposite side. All right, let me summarize this. Craw or crop, a gizzard, not a bird of prey, does not devour food while flying, has that separation of the middle toe and the rear toe are both elongated, and when it's clinging to a perch, the 3 front toes are in front of the perch and the hind toes in the back. Now here's where I'm going. All unclean birds lack at least one of those 6 characteristics. That's not as easy to remember as split hoof and
I'll stick with chicken.
pardon?
I'll stick with chicken.
Sure. Well, I like a variety of poultry. We raise
Turkey, chicken and turkey.
we raise geese. They're clean. We have raised ducks. They're clean. Chickens are clean. Quail are clean. Grouse are clean. Pheasants are clean. But it's the birds are not. That the distinction is not as easy to pull up as it is with the either the water-dwelling animals, or the land-dwelling.
There's a big ration of people eating ostrich and emus for a while.
Right. In fact, that's big business in a lot of places, but they're not clean. How do I know that? It says in the book. Now, the Hebrew word translated unclean is tameh. Tameh has nothing to do with the hygienic practices of a species, and it has nothing to do with potential toxicity to humans. It specifically means that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh has declared this species to be suitable for human food. Go ahead.
Yeah, pause.
We'll pause. All right. Well, big surprise, we're going to be studying Leviticus 11 today. No, wait a minute, you knew that, didn't you? And we will be for a while, still, because it's important material. And I'm so thankful that we no longer try to rush through any forced reading schedule or study schedule. We will take the time that we think is necessary to cover the Torah as we go through. And I want to offer just a word or two of review from the end of what we talked about last week. And that is, few subjects have been so challenging to believers as the ability to identify the underlying meaning of the word holiness. What is holiness? What does the Father mean by this term? What did Moses mean by the word holiness? And we could take time right now and debate that among ourselves for the rest of what time we have this morning. But both Jews and Christians understand that one attribute of holiness is separateness. We've already discussed that concept this morning. The Creator of the universe is not all-inclusive. He is not attempting to draw all religions and all people together. He has from the beginning been separating that which he approves from what he doesn't approve, and separating things which both classes he may approve of both, but do not belong together. Light and darkness, for instance, one of the first things he separated. Neither of those is unholy. Certainly darkness is used as a metaphor for sin, and light is used as a metaphor for saving faith and right pathway. But he has from the beginning been separating things and people from each other. We all recognize, all believers recognize that his followers, his children, those who accept him in faith are set apart for service to Yehovah. But somehow that idea of just holiness being separateness is not, I guess, emotionally satisfying, not quite enough. And Leviticus shows us that more is involved. The nature of holiness is a little more fleshed out. But how is holiness different from all other states, and what are the chief characteristics of holiness? The last thing I said last week is that the best explanation I have found, the one that I believe is most true to the Word of Yehovah, the one that covers both the spiritual and physical aspects of holiness, is this. Holiness is summed up in the word shalom. Wholeness, completeness, nothing lacking, without imperfection. You heard me say that last week, but I wanted to come back to that point before we begin today. Let's finally read the 11th chapter of Leviticus. And a couple of paragraphs would include verses 1 through 8. So somebody read 1 through 8 for us.
Jehovah said to Moshe and Aaron, tell the people of Israel, these are the living creatures which you may eat among all the land animals. Any that has a separate hoof which is completely divided and chews the cud. These animals you may eat, but you are not to eat those that only chew the cud or have a separate hoof. For example, the camel, the coney, and the hare are unclean for you because they chew the cud but don't have a separate hoof. While the pig is unclean for you because although it has a separate and completely divided hoof, it doesn't chew the cud. You are not to eat the meat from these or touch their carcasses. They are unclean for you.
And a couple more paragraphs would be verses 9 through 19. Someone read that much for us.
These you may eat of all that are in the water. Whatever in the water has fins and scales, whether in the seas or in the rivers, that you may eat. But all in the seas or in the rivers that do not have fins and scales, all that move in the water, or any living thing which is in the water, they are an abomination to you. They shall be an abomination to you. You shall not eat their flesh, but you shall regard their carcasses as an abomination. Whatever in the water does not have fins or scales, that shall be an abomination to you.
Keep going through 19.
Okay. And these you shall regard as an abomination among the birds. They shall not be eaten. They are an abomination. The eagle, the vulture, the buzzard, the kite, and the falcon after its kind, every raven after its kind, the ostrich, the short-eared owl, the seagull, and the hawk after its kind, the little owl, the fisher owl, and the screech owl, the white owl, the jackdaw, and the carrion vulture, the stork, the heron after its kind, the hoopoe, and the bat.
I've never yet figured out what a hoopoe is. Does
I've never
anyone?
looked it up.
Or hoopoe? What? All right, and a couple more short paragraphs, verses 20 through 28. I meant to look that up, the hoopoe.
It's all the winged insects that walk on fours are detestable to you. Yet these you may eat among the winged insects that walk on all fours, those who have jointed legs above their feet with which to jump on the earth. These of them that you may eat, the locust and its kinds, the devastating locust and its kinds, the cricket and its kinds, the grasshopper and its kinds, but the other winged insects which are four-footed are detestable to you. By these, moreover, you will be made unclean. Whoever touches their carcasses becomes unclean until evening. Whoever picks up any of the carcasses shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. As for all the animals which have divided hoof but do not show a split hoof, or do not chew the cud, they are unclean, and whoever touches them becomes unclean. Also whatsoever walks on his paws, among all the creatures that walk on fours, are unclean to you. Whoever touches their carcasses becomes unclean until evening. And the one who picks up their carcasses shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. They are unclean to you.
All right, 29 through 32 is a paragraph. Susan, would you read that?
29 through 32?
Yep.
Yes. Of the animals that move on the ground, these are are unclean for you. The whistle, the rat, any of its kind of grape, Licard, the GECOK, and the mustard, LICAR, as the wall, LICAR, the skeek, and the charmander. Of all of these that move on the ground, these are unclean for you. Whosoever touches them, or they are dead, will be unclean until evening. When one of them dies and falls on something, that article, whatever it is, will be unclean, and whether it is made of wood, cloth, hide, or sackcloth, put it in water, it will be unclean until the evening, and then it will be clean.
Okay, and then,
Do I need to keep going?
no, that's fine.
Let's do 32.
Yeah, well, that's far enough, I probably said it wrong. 33 through 40 is a paragraph, someone read that.
If one of them falls into a clay pot, whatever is in it will become unclean, and you are to break the pot. Any food permitted to be eaten, that water from such a vessel gets on will become unclean, and any permitted liquid in such a vessel will become unclean. Everything on which any carcass part of theirs falls will become unclean, whether oven or stove, it is to be broken in pieces. They are unclean and will be unclean for you. Although a spring or cistern for collecting water remains clean. But anyone who touches one of their carcasses will become unclean. If any carcass part of theirs falls on any kind of seed to be sown, it is clean. But if water is put on the seed, and a carcass part of theirs falls on it, it is unclean for you.
Go two more.
Two more.
Yeah.
Our paragraphs are broken different. If any animal or a kind that you are permitted to eat does, whoever touches its carcass will be unclean until evening. A person who eats meat from its carcass or carries its carcass is to wash his clothes, and he will be unclean until evening.
All right, you have a sentence about one who carries its carcass is to. All right.
Yeah, that's 40.
A person who eats meat from its carcass or carries its carcass
Okay.
is
all
to
right.
wash his clothes. Yeah.
All right, and then, let's see, a couple, there's not a lot left, but 3 short paragraphs in the ESV. And of course, we know the Word of God is inspired, but chapter and verse divisions are not, and paragraph divisions are not. So we have to put up with some of this, but 41 through the end, through 47, we can